Hello, it's Danusia here. If you want your breath to catch and your heart to stop, turn to my guest, Kate Baer, who writes poems about everything from body image to parenthood struggles to marital sex, and mostly about being human in a bewildering world. Kate is 3-time New York Times bestselling author of What Kind of Woman? I Hope This Finds You Well, and her latest, called And Yet. In today's episode, Kate joins me to explore some honest realities of being a mum. I hope you enjoy our convo. I'm curious when you began to crystallize some of your poetry, or whether it's, were you 3 writing poems?
I mean, I've always loved poetry. I've always read poetry, but for a long time, I felt like I couldn't write it. I thought I had to be some sort of like grad student smoking a pipe, wandering around Venice. And then I just kind of went for it. A poet who I love very much, Mary Oliver, had just died. And I was rereading her books and I realized how much I loved that kind of boiled down storytelling. Kind of like witchcraft. I mean, you take a few sentences and kind of get a whole worldview. And so I started doing that and then had such a great response that I just kept going.
Yeah, Mary Oliver's work's amazing. Who else do you love?
So Maya Angelou for sure, and Ellen Bass are based. I'm not sure how you say her last name. Olivia Gatwood, she's a little bit younger than me, but she has some really wonderful poetry. Lucille Clifton, Audre Lorde, kind of the greats of the women poets of the past few decades. And then there's some contemporaries as well. Layla Shadi, she's a Muslim poet. I mean, I have to say they're mostly women because they're the ones who speak to me. They're talking about the things that I can identify with, even if it's Emily Dickinson, however long ago, 100 years ago, it still connects even then. I collect poets like a poetry collection. I find a new one and then I try to read everything she's written.
I'm exactly the same. I collect when I read somebody. I remember like years ago when I was really young, well, it feels like really years ago, to be honest. There's a poet called Sharon.
Yes, yes, she's on my list too. Oh, she's wonderful.
Isn't she?
She just wrote a poem called The Pope's Penis. You have to read it. It's so funny.
The Pope's Penis.
It's hilarious, and that's the kind of poetry she writes, and you'd think that would be not great, but it's just wonderful.
So at the heart of her work is irreverence. And it's the tone of each of these poets brings us another piece of ourselves, a possible piece, just a little tiny fragment of something that might ignite something, doesn't it? But what have you gleaned from this collection of poets? What did they give you as a poet yourself?
I mean, it depends. They all kind of give different things. Me, Sharon Old kind of gives you permission to talk about the Pope's penis or talk about anything irreverent or otherwise kind of off limits. Mary Oliver kind of inspires you to maybe pause and take a breath. And yeah, I think they all kind of contribute little things, anything from style to content to just permission to write about certain topics. I think they're the best teachers. I find that reading poetry is, for me, the only way to write better poetry is to read as much as I can.
Yeah, exactly. To immerse yourself in other extraordinary poetry in order to
Right.
kind of bathe in it.
Yeah.
And then find yourself. And I guess that brings me to, how have you found your words in the midst of motherhood itself?
I try to write about a lot of different topics, but I always end up coming back to the same thing, women feeling seen in their bodies, in their marriages, and kind of in their lives. And I mean, I think especially right now when mothers are expected to shoulder, the brunt of childcare and domestic responsibility. I hope that at least the book is kind of a confirmation of worse, like someone who gets it, who understands, and is kind of angry on your behalf. That's kind of where I feel where I am right now. Like I said, I try to write about other things, but it always comes back to that.
Yeah, try to go over there, but you return anyway. So whatever happens, you find yourself coming back to the source. The source being what women, like the reclamation of women, the reclamation of motherhood, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being seen and understood. Yeah.
And I absolutely adore the idea that you are angry on women's behalf, mothers' behalf.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. It's hard not to be.
What are you angry about then? Or let me just tweak that. What would you love mothers to be angry about?
I would love mothers to be angry about their lack of worth. Just in our society, and jobs are being compromised, careers, lifelong goals are being compromised, and there's nothing set in place for this. And I hear a lot of my peers being angry, but I don't see anyone in a larger structure talking about any ways to solve it. A lot of my friends are very sad and very angry and just almost heartbroken. But I'm angry on the mother's behalf of having to give up so much in general, but especially now, just because they're mothers.
Next, Kate asks me an important question. Her perspectives are from lived experience in North America, while mine are from the UK.
Is that the same vibe where you are? Or do you find that mothers are angry for the same reasons there? Or do you think that is an American problem?
My suspicion is that the reason so many women are on antidepressants and why there's a high divorce rate and why there's seething, there's livid seething, a fever sitting under many women's lives, kind of as a bedrock of many women's lives, because of the same thing. There are depressed women, clinically depressed women, and clinically depressed mothers. Yes, there are. Of course there are. And disaffected women, and huge percentage of women become mothers. So these women who go to the doctor and say there's something wrong, I can't feel like I used to, I'm numb, I'm cross, I don't know what to do with myself, I've lost my confidence, I don't know what actions to take, all these they'll say very different things than I've just said, that basically I've lost myself. Where am I? What happened to me? Who did I become? This was not the deal. I did not get married or get into a relationship or go to uni or work hard, all these things to then feel the way I do.
Right.
I don't think it is a US-based issue. I think it's a global epidemic. And then we're landed with the result, which is, well, clearly you've done something wrong if you couldn't find a solution.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
That's your problem, isn't it, darling? There's other women out there that can do it. So what's your problem?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, of course, there's seething, furious, sad, heartbroken women.
Yeah.
The fantasy hasn't held up,
Right.
The romantic patriarchal fantasy doesn't hold tight, I'm afraid.
Right.
But that's me. Maybe I've taken it in a place that, tell me, what do you think of what I said?
Well, I don't know. I grew up watching Disney movies, and so that's kind of what it seems like it's going to be, a fantasy. And even going through my 20s and kind of becoming more enlightened, you might say, by the world, I still felt like I wouldn't have used the word fairy tale, but I think subconsciously it felt like when I got married and had children, it would all just kind of work out. And it's such a wake-up call when it's reality, when it's real children and a real marriage. It's so different.
There's a lot of material for you.
There's so much material in it. It only grows, and the more life you live, the more you have to talk about, I guess. I see that through poets and writers in general. The longer they live, the more their work changes in a way that's kind of beautiful. It becomes more, I don't even know what the word is, a well-rounded worldview, but I wish I could think of a better way to say it, but I'm living such a visceral life right now. It's like my kids are young, and so everything is so raw, and so the emotions are strong. And I wonder how my writing and others who are kind of in the same spot of me, how our writing will change as time evolves and motherhood evolves and womanhood evolves. Yeah, it's interesting.
I wonder about the different stages of motherhood, and I'm lucky to have that in my experience bank because I have so many children and so many children of different ages.
Right.
But also because I have a special needs child. And with some special needs children, including him, there's a physicality to his managing how he is with the world.
And that probably changes how you engage with the world too.
Yes.
In so many ways, and how you feel things and how you interpret other people's behavior and other people's communication. And that changes everything.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think there's a very visceral, raw, physical beginning to having children where it's, literally your own body and the incredible changes that are miraculous and devastating. I don't mean in a negative way of like, oh, what a shame that changed. I just mean that like rupturing of so many things that can happen. for good, actually, but it's never quite the same. And then there comes a time when they're just that bit older when they just don't have that. And even hugs change, that kind of physical zoning, the intimacy has a different quality to it. It really does, which I imagine would change the poems that would come from a poet, writing about that, kind of expressing,
Right.
and the violence, the potential violence of the teen years.
Yes. And I think the writing would change with that for sure.
Yeah. The rules of engagement, and especially because they're females. So there's a real emotional intensity to their engagement. I think it's an engagement issue.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine.
Which kind of brings me, it's really about the changes that we encounter and the adaptability that mothers, particularly, or mothering, demands from us.
Yeah. And I think that it's funny how mothers are often seen as, unhireable when really their skill set is so sharpened by motherhood, flexibility, and just the ability to multitask.
Oh, indeed. The kind of breadth of our adaptability is sharpened so much that it's ludicrous to imagine that mothers are kind of so distracted and only able to do one thing at a time. And it's just like,
Right.
it's just bizarre and insane. And it doesn't hold up at all.
Right. Mothers raising children and doing their full-time job at home. I mean, it's happening every day for sure.
At what cost, I wonder? What do you think?
At a major cost. Someone's always losing in that scenario.
Thank goodness that you bring, on behalf of others, your anger to the fore, to be visible, to be seen. It's a lovely conversation. Thank you so much, Kate.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I hope you check out Kate Baer's powerful and visceral poetry. Next week, I'll bring you another lightning-fast episode with a great guest. Till then, keep thinking and loving. Take care, everyone.